Scarface, a bloody, gritty crime film which has gone down in history as a cinematic masterpiece, with incredible performances from Al Pacino, Michelle Pfeiffer and Stephen Bauer, to name a few. It also happens to be my favourite movie of all time. The main reason I love Scarface is because of the incredible journey that Tony Montana, the protagonist, is taken on. Montana goes from a small-time Cuban refugee who arrives in America with absolutely nothing, to a powerful drug lord who, after an incredible rise to the top, becomes a victim of his own greed and selfishness. The movie starts with Tony and his best friend Manny reaching the shores of America as part of the Mariel boat lift, an operation that involved the mass emigration of Cubans to the United States, which at the time was seen as a form of social cleansing by the Castro government by getting rid of citizens they felt were undesirable. They arrived with absolutely nothing but a vision of the American dream, and they were going to have to work their way up from the very bottom if they were to make something of themselves. The beginning of Scarface felt a lot like you were watching the start of a Grand Theft Auto game, which would make a lot of sense because Vice City was heavily based on Scarface. As a massive GTA fan myself, the similarity was something that really excited me. The scene where Omar comes to the restaurant where Tony is working and offers him that job in Miami felt like you were watching an early mission, even if the protagonist wouldn't ordinarily make cocky near-suicidal negotiations like scoffing at a $500 job and settling for something 10 times the profit. Now normally, people who come to a new place and have to start from the very bottom will set themselves small, achievable goals to get themselves up and running. Tony Montana was not that kind of person. He didn't just want success, he wanted everything, and he wanted it as soon as possible. He had an unrelenting desire to turn his life into everything he ever wanted. Working as a restaurant dishwasher wasn't going to cut it for Tony, and upon getting his big break with Omar, Tony immediately retires from the dishwashing scene by throwing the towel at his boss and effectively telling him to do one. Then came the infamous chainsaw scene, which on my first viewing led to my predictably British reaction of, "Oh bloody hell." And I guess when you think about it, watching a man get his head violently cut open is exactly that. Bloody hell. What I also like is the fact that it explores Tony assessing his moral boundaries. He is a man who started out as somebody who killed as a means of survival and a way to work himself up the ladder. But as he starts climbing that ladder, those lines blur, and his justification for taking people out shifts significantly. Taking out Frank Lopez, his first boss, was a way of expanding his empire and extending his deal with Bolivian kingpin Alejandro Sosa, who Tony had developed a good relationship with after Frank sent him to Bolivia to strike up a deal with him. It was also a way of being able to marry Frank's wife Elvira, who he was heavily attracted to. This then leads to an incredible run of success for Tony that results in running a multi-million-pound empire and being surrounded by the greatest set of guards that he could afford, with all morals seemingly out of the window in exchange for a life of luxury. However, once Tony had reached the top, his paranoia and ego isolated him. He alienated his closest friends like Manny and had become increasingly controlling, especially over his younger sister Gina. Tony now had everything he had ever wanted, so in his mind the people that helped him get there were now surplus to requirements. His selfishness had reached unparalleled heights, and the only person that he was invested in was himself. Tony's mentality then became a case of everyone who dares to cross me has to go, and this mentality goes overboard when he finds Manny and Gina together in the same house. Tony jumps the gun and then shoots it, killing his best friend without even giving it a second thought. Upon finding out that they had got married the previous day, Tony immediately regrets what he has done, but this spark of morality had come far too late. Or perhaps, given the events of the previous scene, it had come too early. Tony had just blown a big hit in New York when he had a rare case of allowing good principles to get in the way of his career, ruining a deal that he had with Sosa in which Tony would be freed from prison time following a federal sting on Tony for tax evasion. Tony was tasked with killing a journalist about to expose Sosa, but instead of doing so, Tony decided to spare the life of the journalist after finding out that his family were in the car with him and he wasn't prepared to live with the consequences of taking 3 innocent lives. The irony of this came back in a cruel twist of fate when he took Manny's life and ruined his sister's in the process. By this point, Tony was already well on the path to self-destruction. He had a lethal cocaine addiction and a mass indulgence in various acts of violence. Both of these things perfectly symbolise his internal decay. The very things that he had craved had ended up consuming him, and Scarface does an excellent job of portraying excess leading to ruin. The movie perfectly explores how ambition and greed can lead to self-destruction, and Tony's story is a cautionary tale of what can happen when you let too much power go to your head. Tony's arrogance and pride are his greatest flaws, with him becoming so successful that he genuinely believes he is untouchable. Coupled with his refusal to collaborate or align with other people in his industry, such as Sosa, his ego had become so inflated that he now thought he was above everybody else and that no one was worthy enough to be on his level. Oliver Stone and Brian De Palma both did an incredible job at capturing every stage of Tony's development with pinpoint accuracy, as well as the potential consequences for everyone else in his world, including his wife Elvira, who became alienated due to Tony neglecting her. Tony had showcased himself to Elvira as an upgrade on Frank, only to follow the exact same patterns and end up as an identical replacement. The movie ends with Tony's downfall, and once again, like his rise to power, the movie portrays his demise brilliantly. Tony, in his incessantly arrogant nature, thinks he can defeat an entire army of Sosa's men after all of his own guards were shot down. This scene, of course, spawning the classic line, "Say hello to my little friend." Incredible impression there. He taunts the attackers and goads them relentlessly, attempting to keep up the facade of arrogance in a defiant but doomed attempt to fight back against his fate. After suffering a series of wounds during the standoff, Tony finally meets his fate, and his reign over the American cocaine industry is over. His final stand in the mansion is chaotic and desperate. He's a man clinging to his empire as it crumbles around him. Tony achieves his version of the American dream, but at a devastating cost. His downfall shows how ambition without limits and success without responsibility can be deadly. His story isn't just about crime, it's about how chasing power can actually make you weaker in the long run and destroy you. Tony Montana's journey is great because it's larger than life, yet at the same time there's a deeply human layer to it. His rise is thrilling and his fall is tragic, making him one of cinema's most memorable anti-heroes. It's a tale of attempting to overcome a life of unfulfillment to carve out a road to success, something that a lot of people can resonate with. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it enjoyable and informative. If you did enjoy it, please consider leaving a like on there for me, and if you're new around here, why not get subscribed so that you can be notified of future videos like this one. Comment below any thoughts and suggestions that you may have. Thank you once again, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.